The committee will now come to order. The Postal Service is once again telling Congress that it's out of money, running out of money. And once again, the answer seems to be send the bill to the taxpayer, just give us some more money. Every private business in America lives under a discipline the Postal Service has escaped. When demand falls, a business makes hard choices, cuts costs, uses contractors when they can do the job for less, and when something fails, it stops doing it. A company that refuses to adjust does not double its line of credit from the Treasury. It goes out of business. The Postal Service plays by different rules. When volume falls, it does not cut headcount, it adds. We've added over 120,000 employees. It's the opposite of what you do. When a private partner can do the work for less, you pull the work in-house. Instead, you've been pulling the work in-house at a higher cost. When a capital project fails, the post office keeps writing checks. And when the bill comes due, the post office hasn't answered. It comes to Congress asking for a higher credit limit and calls it reform. That's the heart of the problem. The post office has been protected from the hard choices that would stop the bleeding. So the bleeding never stops. Look at the record. We were told that the 2022 reform law, which shifted $107 billion away from the post office, would pull the Postal Service out of the hole. We were told that the Delivering for America plan would modernize the network and restore solvency. We were told this time it would be different. It was not. Since those promises, the Post Office has lost another $26 billion, and it is spending money it does not have on infrastructure it may not need. Since 2007, the Postal Service has lost more than $117 billion, $9 billion in the last year. Before anyone calls those losses uncontrollable, its own numbers say otherwise. It has roughly $18 billion in controllable losses since 2007, $3 billion just last year. This is not a rough patch. That is a broken business model. The Postal Service has already maxed out all $15 billion it can borrow from the Treasury. The Postmaster General warns it could run out of cash as soon as September if it continues to meet all statutory obligations. So the question is not whether the Post Office needs more money. The question is whether Congress will keep rewarding failure without requiring change. This is a business built for a country that no longer exists, and it refuses to adjust to the one that does. First-class mail is down 34% since 2014. Over the same period, the Post Office grew its career workforce by 9%. That makes no sense. Volume down by a third, headcount up. No private business would do that. Labor is about 80% of the Postal Service costs. At UPS, also unionized, it's closer to 60%. So the difference is not the union. The difference is whether management will adjust to reality. And instead of adjusting, it made things worse. Since 2020, even as revenue fell, the Postal Service converted about 285,000 workers into career positions, raising their pay and locking in decades of pension and health obligations it has no plan to fund. When a private company's volume falls, it reduces labor costs. When the Postal Service volume fell, it added employees and made them more expensive. This is not reform. This is the opposite of reform. The new Postmaster General did not make all of these decisions, but he controls whether they continue. The fleet electrification, the multi-billion-dollar network redesign, the capital projects without a clear return. These are not unavoidable costs. They are expensive choices, and Congress deserves to know whether new leadership will continue them. At the very least, the Postmaster General should immediately implement a hiring freeze to get labor costs under control. There are estimates that $1.8 billion could be saved in the first year with a hiring freeze. We've had a year, and I haven't seen any action in this direction. And while it runs up these costs, the Postal Service will still price its core product below what delivery cost. A stamp is 78 cents heading to 82, still among the cheapest in the developing world. With its dominant products priced below cost, it's no wonder the Postal Service can't break even. That is not a business plan, it is a hidden tax. Before Congress considers another dollar of relief or more borrowing authority, the Postal Service should show the committee 5 things: a real plan to bring labor costs under control, proof that private partners will be used where they cost less, a commitment to stop capital spending that shows no return, a willingness to consolidate facilities that no longer make sense, and proof the service mandate can be met without permanent losses. And if it cannot, an honest debate about the mandate itself. Anything less is not reform. It is a slower, more expensive way to fail. And as always, the bill will be sent to the American people. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for convening today's important hearing. For more than 250 years, the United States Postal Service has helped bind our country together. It's connected families, it supports small businesses, it ensures that Americans nationwide can receive the essential mail and goods, no matter where they live. The Postal Service is the only carrier that delivers to every single address in America. That's a feat that for-profit competitors don't even try to meet. For communities across the country, particularly harder to reach rural communities, the Postal Service and its workers provide an essential public service each and every day. In 2022, I was proud to lead and pass the Bipartisan Postal Services Reform Act, which increased transparency around postal delivery performance, ended overly burdensome retiree health care pre-funding requirements, and integrated Postal Service retirees' health care into Medicare, and codified 6-day delivery service. However, it's clear that the Postal Service continues to face significant challenges. The Delivering for America plan has not worked. Costs are up, service is down, and customers are paying the price. The plan has not yielded the financial results needed to stabilize the Postal Service's bottom line. Over the past 5 fiscal years, the Postal Service has posted $9.7 billion in controllable losses. Earlier this year, Postmaster General STEINER testified in the House that the Postal Service could run out of cash as soon as this year. Since then, the Postal Regulatory Commission gave the Postal Service flexibility on how it spends revenue from its additional rate authority, providing the Postal Service with an additional $2.4 billion this year. The Postal Service has also temporarily suspended its normal contributions to the employee retirement plans to preserve cash. While the Postal Service has not provided a formal estimate of exactly when it will exhaust its available funds, it's clear that Congress and the Postal Service must take action to ensure Americans continue receiving mail reliably and affordably for the next 250 years. The Postal Service has shared some proposals with Congress that would help put it on stronger financial footing, including investing its pension funds, revising its calculation for its civil service retirement system obligation, as well as raising the borrowing limit. The Postmaster General is also now asking Congress to consider reviving an appropriation for the Postal Service. These proposals certainly deserve serious review, but any reform must come with real transparency, real accountability, and clear service improvement plans. The Postal Service must also do a better job of ensuring that every employee returns home safely at the end of each day. Last year, Nicholas Acker was tragically killed in an accident at a processing facility in Allen Park, Michigan. That facility was cited by OSHA on its safety standards compliance. And at my urging, the Office of Inspector General has now launched a nationwide facility safety audit. I expect the Postal Service to fully cooperate with the audit and double down on its efforts to protect all of its employees when they're on the job. And finally, we can't discuss the future of the Postal Service without addressing the recently published proposed rule on voting by mail that would enable President Trump to hijack the Postal Service for his own political gain. The Postal Service is a proud tradition dating all the way back to the Civil War of successfully delivering absentee ballots. In 2024, they securely delivered almost 100 million ballots. Last year, the Postal Service reaffirmed that its job is simply to transmit the mail and explicitly said they do not administer elections. The President's March executive order directs the Postal Service to create, quote, new mail-in absentee participation list, which they will use to verify which voters are eligible to receive and cast ballots through the mail. This would give the Postal Service unprecedented authority over American elections and is an unconstitutional subversion of the Postal Service's duty. I'm disappointed that the Postal Service chose to give in to the President's illegal demands by issuing a proposed regulation that risks disenfranchising millions of eligible American voters nationwide. The Board of Governors did not even vote on these approved changes. Under the proposed rules, states must submit each absentee voter to a new national database controlled by the Postal Service and comply with new federal ballot mail-in requirements, or they will be prohibited from using the mail-in voting in their elections. The Postal Service will also conduct undefined ballot verification processes to ensure states meet these new federally imposed standards. Ultimately, the federal government will serve as the final arbiter as to who can actually vote by mail. Yesterday, I led the entire Democratic caucus to once again insist that the Postal Service abandon its effort, uphold the law, and return to its core functions. The Postal Service has one mission: to deliver the mail, no matter who sends it and no matter where it's going. Mr. Steiner, I urge you to abandon these efforts and return the Postal Service to its constitutional role of simply delivering the mail, not acting as a partisan tool for the President. And lastly, I would like to reiterate that the Postal Service must be transparent and responsive to this committee so that we can work collaboratively on the many issues that we face. I hope that today's hearing will be a productive conversation about how we can work together to improve the financial position of the Postal Service and to protect its ability to deliver for each and every American. Thank you, Mr. President.
It is the practice of this committee to swear in witnesses. Will you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated. David Steiner is the 76th Postmaster General of the United States and Chief Executive Officer of the U.S. Postal Service. He was appointed by the organization's Board of Governors and began his tenure on July 15, 2025. In his role as Postmaster General, Steiner also serves as a member of the Board of Governors. Steiner is the former CEO of Waste Management, a $20.4 billion waste and environmental services company operating throughout North America with nearly 50,000 employees. He was CEO from 2004 to 2016. Mr. Steiner, you are recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chairman Paul, Ranking Member Peters, and Senators of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the future of the Postal Service, a venerated institution that has driven the growth of these United States for over 250 years, longer than the country itself. The title of this hearing is apt. The Postal Service has a broken business model, and we welcome the committee's focus on fixing it. You know, levers available to private sector enterprises and to government agencies are unavailable to the Postal Service. So, for example, first, we're mandated by law to deliver to every address, more than 170 million of them, 6 days a week, and there are over 1 million new stops added every year. This leads to 84% of city delivery and 52% of rural delivery routes being financially underwater. Moreover, 58%, or 18,000 of our post offices are losing money, incurring over $2.5 billion in operating costs. In a normal business model, if 70% of routes are losing money, you would adjust the routes. In a normal business model, if 60% of the stores you had were losing money, you'd close them. We're not allowed to do either. That is a broken business model. Second, we're not allowed to unilaterally raise prices, and we're required by law to give billions of dollars in discounts to many mailers. Third, we can only invest our retirement assets in U.S. Treasuries. If we were able to invest conservatively in other assets, we could have had nearly $1 trillion in additional retirement assets, and our retirement plans would be well overfunded rather than underfunded. Fourth, We pay an unfair allocation of CSRS benefits for retirees that were with the Post Office Department before it became the independent Postal Service. That costs us about $3.5 billion a year. Fifth, we cannot borrow more than $15 billion due to a statutory limit that was established decades ago that has not been adjusted for earnings or for inflation. Sixth, we're not allowed to manage our workers' compensation claims, costing us anywhere from $400 to $800 million a year. Now, despite all of these operational and accounting restraints, we're taking steps to fight our way back. That includes reducing transportation costs by $2 billion. We also reduced work hours by 56 million hours, equivalent to $3 billion, and reduced our overall headcount by 28,000. We've also made dramatic progress in improving our service scores, recently hitting on-time delivery numbers not seen in at least the last 5 years. This is significant progress, but it's not enough, and we will continue to drive costs and drive service. So, to me, the choice for Congress is clear. Either remove the mandates that create the unsustainable business model, or compensate the Postal Service for those money-losing mandates. I will note that reimbursing the Postal Service for money-losing mandates is not a novel idea. In 1971, Congress foresaw that they would be asking the Postal Service to do things that were guaranteed to lose money. In return, Congress decided to pay the Postal Service $460 million a year for those public service mandates. However, this public service reimbursement has not been appropriated since the 1980s. Our preferred proposal is that Congress update this public service reimbursement to reflect the true current costs of those mandates and allocate us those funds. However, we can also achieve profitability if we remove the money-losing mandates. But doing so doesn't just affect the Postal Service, but the entire ecosystem around it. That ecosystem supports $2 trillion in revenue and 8 million jobs. If the Postal Service reduces service and raises prices, that ecosystem suffers. Jobs are lost, and the overall economy suffers. So in closing, I'm here to tell America that we can do anything they desire, but we can't afford to do everything they desire without more help. The Postal Service has been an integral part of the growth of America, subsidizing the growth of steamships, railroads, aviation, and technology. So subsidizing the Post Office has been a spectacular investment for the United States. We believe this economic engine and that investment is worth saving, and we look forward to discussing with you how to best do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be glad to take some questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now proceed to questions. There are things you can control and things you can't control, and the mandates, I frankly would remove the mandates and treat it more like a business. I just remove them completely. Even some compromises, you go from 6 days to 5 days, you save $3 billion. You go to 4 days, you save $3 billion. Another $3 billion, that'd be $6 billion. That's 2/3 of your annual debt just by going to 4 days. You could let people pay. If they want it 6 days, they pay an extra $30 a month or $50 a month to get it. I think what you'd find is in the marketplace, almost nobody would pay. They'd get used to getting it in 4 days. But there are things you control. Hiring freeze. Hiring freeze, we see estimates as much as $1.8 billion a year, and actually cumulative costs going up higher. Why no hiring freeze?
We actually did institute a hiring freeze probably about 40 days ago. Put out a memo not only with a hiring freeze, but a spending freeze.
How does it work to have the postal rates change? The Postal Regulatory Commission does it. Do you ask them to do things? What is the communication between the Board of Governors and the PRC? Are they completely separate? How do rates go up?
Yeah, so our rates are capped right now. Our rates are capped by an inflation factor and then a number of stops, basically, type of
But do you submit something to them saying we're losing money, we're below with the market rate, we have to go up? Do you submit that to them?
Yeah, we recently, so it limits us as to what type of price increases we can get. We recently filed a petition, and they have undertaken a 5-year review. We recently filed a petition that said, allow us to raise prices to meet this loss gap that we have. That petition is under consideration right now. I would hope that the PRC would give it full consideration. You know, the truth is, Mr. Chairman, that in my opinion, the PRC has not put the financial sustainability of the post office first. And they will tell you they have a number of factors that they have to balance. I completely agree with that. But at a time when we are failing, I think they should give more credence to allowing us to do the things that we need to do to become profitable. And they have prevented us from doing a number of those things.
If some of the numbers were accurate, you're telling us you would have gone a long way towards reducing the $9 billion, saving $2 billion in transportation costs, saving $3 billion in hours. That kind of goes along with hiring freeze. That'd be half of your deficit for the year, but I don't believe next year's deficit is going to be half of 9.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, anyone that, you know, I've been associated with a number of businesses, ran a very large one for a long period of time. And the problem that you've got in any business is that you've got inflation in your wage base, you have inflation in your supplier base, you have a lot of different inflation. So what you try to do is to get enough productivity to offset that inflation in your cost base. Right. This year, we will offset all but 0.2% of our cost increases. But the problem is, in order to make money, any business person, go to any business school, they will tell you, get productivity to offset your inflation in your cost base, and then price and volume can drop straight to the bottom line. You become profitable.
So currently, I just want to be clear, there is a hiring freeze at the post office.
There is.
Raising the price from 78 cents to 95 generates about $1.6 billion. Hiring freeze about $1.8 billion in the first year, goes up over time. $3 billion for each day reduced. You know, I think the hiring freeze could have come earlier, but at least you will start saving some from 40 days ago. There are some people reporting that this really isn't a full hiring freeze. So I would like details on exactly what a hiring freeze means to you to make sure it means the same thing to us. I think that when you and I had talked, and when we had talked with your staff coming into this, what we really wanted was you to prepare for us. This is where we spend our money. This is where we could reduce. This I can do on my own, and this I can do with Congress's help. That's what I would do if I were in charge. I would put out things and say, well, instead of just complaining about the mandates, tell us specifically. You know, it looks like for each one day it's $3 billion. And, you know, Congress needs to address that. Part of this is Congress's fault, you know, because they have unrealistic mandates that make it hard for you. But the previous postmaster expanded the post office. He made the post office bigger. The only thing you really can control is you can outsource, not insource. We have known that since the beginning of time. It's not rocket science. Contractors cost less than the government employees. 80% of your cost is labor. Reducing labor is the only thing you can do, and contractors do it better. I don't care if you outsource 98% of it and have no post office and you're a shell for contracting, because it's the only thing you can do, because nothing the post office does is efficient or makes money. So what I would like is for you to send us a more detailed, this is the money that comes in, this is what we would do, this is what happens if the rate goes up. We have sent a letter to the Postal Commission. I really think that we ought to consider combining it and just having one, just have a board of governors, have no postal rate commission, and just have one commission. The people who run it should be setting the prices, and there could be a veto power by Congress if they didn't want to do it. But the problem is when you vote on prices, nobody wants higher prices, so everybody wants to please the public, and so everybody would always vote for lower prices, but then that's why that's part of the reason why we're here. So I hope you will at least pledge to us that you'll send me a more detailed analysis of what you can do, what you can't do, because the gist of what I got from you today is we just need to borrow more money. And that to me is, I think, defeatism and not something I'm interested in doing, just loaning you more money when you lose $9 billion a year. And it's not just you, it's the mandates, but it's also the system. And, you know, the hiring freeze should have, I would have done that day one. I still hear reports that it's not a complete hiring freeze. So we pledge to send us more information on what exactly we need to do to make the post office whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Glad to do it. And you know, Senator, When I took this job, I took it and had the very narrow focus of how do we make the Postal Service profitable. As I've gone through this job, I've recognized that you can't look at the Postal Service in isolation. You have to look at the Postal Service in the context of this $2 trillion industry that is virtually 100% dependent upon the Postal Service. And so what I'm trying to figure out, and I think what the discussion should be, is how do we do what is best for the American people and what's best for the American Treasury, right? How do we get the most net dollars into the Treasury? And I wouldn't have told you this even 3 months ago, but I would tell you that today, I think it's worth discussing whether having us act as an economic engine, a development company, if you will, of this $2 trillion industry that surrounds us, if that wouldn't generate more net dollars, generate more net jobs, generate more net service for the American public than reducing days of service and reducing numbers of post offices. Now, again,
Well, you know, I think that
I'll do it either way. We can do it either way.
You know,
but I think that's the discussion we need to have.
You could argue that the Egyptians building the pyramids created trillions of dollars in jobs. You know, I think it's a false argument because the money could be spent somewhere else. So we could build pyramids, we can build the post office bigger and call it, oh, for every dollar we create another dollar. But what you're ignoring is for every dollar you put into government, that dollar would have been spent much more effectively in the private marketplace. Senator Peters.
Master General Steiner, the Postal Service's proposed vote by mail rule published on June 2nd at the direction of the President, as I mentioned in my opening comments, I believe should concern every American. This rule marks certainly an alarming departure from the Postal Service's long-standing tradition of neutrally delivering all types of mail. You get a piece of mail with an address on it, you make sure it gets delivered to that address in a timely fashion. You don't ask any other questions. What this basically rule will do is going to turn the Postal Service, however, into a ballot verification agency that's would control basically a master database of every American absentee voter. It would also give the Postal Service new power to determine whose ballots get delivered. I think the Constitution is clear. Elections are to be administered by the states, not the federal government. We have a tradition of our local communities and states administering these elections. And once again, not the federal government. So my question for you is, under what legal authority can the Postal Service regulate who and how people can vote by mail?
Yeah, you know, as you know, our regulations are proposed regulations, not final regulations. You know, as to the authority, I used to be a lawyer, but I was a business lawyer, not a constitutional lawyer. And so I would have to defer that to the courts to understand the authority.
Well, I think it's clear that there's nowhere in the Constitution, there's no federal law that the Postal Service is authorized to create these types of voter databases, ballot verification systems, or mandatory standards. It just simply doesn't exist. It's hard to interpret a law when it doesn't even exist there, which is what we have. Just because President Trump wants to do this does not make it law, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it constitutional. There is certainly a massive difference between general mail requirements and regulating elections. Routine changes to the postal network can have a small impact on election mail, but this effort is a power grab to swap constitutionally mandated state control for what the president wants. I think it's very clear. So last year, Mr. Steiner, you issued a rule that explicitly said that the Postal Service has, quote, no role in administering elections. What has changed?
I don't think anything has changed. You know, Senator, I'm not a political person, and the Postal Service is not a political organization. We, as you said, I think you quite aptly said, we deliver mail. That's what we do. We deliver mail. And that's what ballots are. Ballots are mail. Now, they are a special kind of mail, obviously. They need special care. And so years ago, we recommended what we call Kit 600. In Kit 600, the fundamental premises of Kit 600 is a unique barcode and a unique envelope. That allows us to move those ballots more efficiently, more securely. That is what our proposed rules suggest, is that we have unique barcode, unique envelope. And that is not something that is new. That's something that's been being used by states throughout the country on both sides of the political spectrum. So California has followed it, Oregon has followed it, Arizona has followed it, Florida has followed it, among many other states. And so, to me, it's not a political question. It's a question of how do we most efficiently and securely move ballots. We've been recommending this for many years. All this does is make it a requirement.
Well, certainly best practices are different than having a mandatory requirement. You can follow best practices to deliver it more efficiently without having control of vast voter rolls and having the ability to have that data. This is basically a backdoor way for the federal government to get voting information that states control under the U.S. Constitution. So yes or no, if a state refuses to turn their absentee voter list over to the federal government, will the Postal Service still mail their ballots under this proposal rule?
Under our proposed regulation, no. We would tell the state that we need the manifest in order to, look, what we're asking for.
That's the answer. You would tell no. So the proposed rule basically coerces states to conform to these new requirements and hand over their absentee voter rolls or face the consequences of not being able to vote by mail. Some states, that's all they do. Oregon is completely vote by mail. If they say, no, we control the list, the states control the list, we're not going to give it.
Oregon has followed Kit 600 since the day they started voting by mail.
This is a different issue. This will be a lot different issue. You're telling these states either give the federal government this information, trust the federal government, trust the Trump administration. We'll take good care of these. And if you don't do it, you can't mail absentee ballots. You're going to make a decision that people cannot vote by mail. That's unacceptable.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all that does, Senator, is make sure that we match the ballots that a state believes they're sending out to what actually gets sent out, right? And so all the state gives us is a list of here are the voters that are supposed to get ballots and here are the ballots. We then compare the two, make sure that the ballots that are supposed to be sent get sent. If Maryland had followed that, they probably wouldn't be in the problem they're in today. So it is a much more efficient, a much more effective way to make sure that states, I would think that states would want the information to ensure that the ballots that they think are sending out are the ballots that are actually being sent out.
Well, they do know what they're dropping mail. I think they can understand that. They think if they put an address with their voter rolls on a piece of mail for a ballot and give it to you, they do expect you're actually going to deliver it. You don't have to say, we want all of your information. We want that information in our control. You mentioned Maryland. I think that was a printing error. This regulation wouldn't have done nothing to fix what happened in Maryland. The states control their own elections. That's pretty clear in the Constitution. And an effort by this administration to nationalize elections and have the federal government having this information is incredibly dangerous precedent. You can imagine sharing this information with the Department of Homeland Security and using these lists for a variety of nefarious purposes. We need to protect the integrity of the voting rolls. We need to protect the separation of elections from federal government and ensure that our state and local governments are the one administering their own elections. That's what this is about.
Well, we are the Postal Service. All we do is deliver mail. We're trying to deliver it securely, efficiently, and accurately.
Senator Johnson.
Postmaster General STEINER, welcome to the committee. Thank you for taking on this very thankless task and bringing your business acumen to the table here. From my standpoint, there's two problems. There's the operational problem. There's the unfunded liability problem. And if there's a root cause to any of this, it's because Congress, who has allowed us to become $39 trillion in debt, tries to micromanage the Postal Service with the mandates, with all kinds of other things. So I would agree with President or with Chairman Paul. I would love to see you use your, set the mandates, the congressional requirements aside and just use your business acumen and go, this is what we would need to do to make the postal system solvent operationally. Again, this is a business that's been losing revenue, losing volume for years, and this isn't something new. Okay, so that'd be my request as well. So, you know, give us a detailed plan. Forget all the congressional mandates, but what would you do as a business person looking at this as a business? Let's talk about the unfunded liability. When I became chairman of this committee in 2015, got a lot of pressure to do postal reform. And the postal reform always was a taxpayer bailout, which would not fix it, would not address the operational. In 2022, we did postal reform, and we offloaded about $107 billion of the unfunded liability into Medicare, which, by the way, is not particularly solvent either. We still have $166 billion unfunded liability, correct?
That's correct.
How many years does somebody have to work in the Postal Service before they can retire on full retirement pay?
I don't plan to be here that long, so I never asked that question.
I'm not. Do you not know?
I do not know.
Okay, I think it's pretty short. Do you know what it was in your business?
Pardon?
Do you know what it was in waste management?
In waste management, we didn't have a retirement plan. We had 401ks.
Okay. Well, anyway, it'd be interesting to have that information. You know, what is the Postal Service? What is, you know, average in private sector? Because I think one of the problems is...
I do believe, Senator, I believe, and I may misspeak, but I believe you start vesting at 5 years. I'm not sure when you fully vest.
But I'd like to know that, because that's key information in terms, and then you compare it against the private sector. I have to bring this up. I know the House passed a bill with 74 additional zip codes. You know, we get requests, you know, city wants their own zip code. You respond to this committee. I think the cost of setting that up would be $800 million and then $90 million a year when you're hemorrhaging billions of dollars a year. Can you just describe for the committee the problem in these, I'll call them vanity zip codes?
Sure. And first off, I do believe that we have some alternate type of solutions that we can do other than doing their own dedicated zip code. And so would love to have our staff speak with your staff or with any of the other members of the Senate or Congress that are looking at their own individualized zip code. I think we can come up with some other solutions. The problem, you know, it's interesting because, you know, being the newbie here, you would think new zip code, pretty simple, right? The problem is every single digit in that zip code means something. And so if you change a digit, what do you have to do? You have to put a receiving facility there to receive that mail, right? And then as you go through our process, remember 110 billion pieces every year, call it 300 and some odd million pieces every single day. Our machines are set up by zip code so that boxes get transported to zip codes. You start adding zip codes, what do you have to do? You have to start adding more bays and more boxes, not in one plant, but in every plant throughout the United States. That's why, you know, that $800 billion of capital that it would cost to do it sounds like a crazy number. It's not a crazy number because you have to make that change everywhere throughout the system. And so what we're trying to do is to come up with ways where we can do it without a zip code. You know, part of the reason why folks want their own zip code have nothing to do with the mail. It's because it might give them different insurance rates, right? Let's address the underlying problem rather than adding another $800 billion of cost to the
Was that 800 billion or million?
I'm sorry, 800 million.
Million, that's what I thought. So just to underscore, we did a postal reform bill in 2022, $107 billion offload the American taxpayer. It didn't even come close to solving the problem. I think we need to really focus on that. Again, that's what I resisted during my chairmanship. Now I'm not going to do it until you fix the problem. $107 billion, didn't even touch the problem.
Yeah, and you know, I think that is a perfect example of how we got where we are, right? The problems that were fixed there were what I call the accounting problems, right? Welfare, retirement, different things like that. They weren't the operational problems that plague the post office, right? The mandates that I talked about in my opening remarks. And so that bill took care of a lot of the accounting issues. Again, not all of them.
At the expense of the American taxpayer.
But it exacerbated the operational problem. How did it do that? It required 6-day-a-week delivery. And so instead of, you know, what I'm here to say is let's have the discussion on how we holistically look at fixing both the accounting issues and fix the operational issues, because the operational issues have not been addressed in the prior reform acts.
Thank you.
Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Peters, for this hearing, and welcome, and it's good to see you, Mr. Steiner. As you already discussed with Senator Peters, the Postal Service recently proposed a rule that would allow it to unilaterally block ballots from being sent to certain voters before they ever have the chance to cast a vote. This un-American plan will inevitably result in some law-abiding U.S. citizens not being able to receive the ballots they're entitled to and reduce citizen participation in our democracy. And in my state of New Hampshire, where people vote absentee only if they are physically unable to be at the polls on Election Day and often don't know that that will be the case until kind of the 11th hour, it means that some eligible voters will be unable to vote in my state. The plan is also blatantly illegal. The Constitution is clear that states are responsible for elections, not the Postal Service. So I'll join with other colleagues in urging you to immediately withdraw this rule. But even setting aside the merits of the rule and your own views about whether it is legal, I want to ask a more basic question about the rule of law. If a court tells you to withdraw your rule or to not enforce it, will you follow that court order?
Obviously, yes, we follow court orders.
Good. Okay, moving on. On-time delivery for first-class mail in the New Hampshire region has fallen by more than 10 percentage points over the last 8 years and is now more than 5 percentage points below the Postal Service's own target of 87%. That means nearly 1 in 5 letters are failing to arrive on time. Prior efforts, including cuts to overtime and moving some mail processing out of New Hampshire, likely have contributed to those delays. As Congress considers options to address the Postal Service's financial deficit, those options will depend on your commitments to meet certain service levels. And I think you laid that out today pretty well. What specific commitments can you make to maintaining on-time delivery in rural areas, and how can this committee hold you to them?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to maintain on-time delivery. We want to improve on-time delivery because it really is. To me, that is the calling card of the Postal Service, right? That is the price of admission that we have. If we can't effectively and efficiently serve our customers, then I completely agree with you. You shouldn't give us any help. And so, as I've looked at it, a big part of what we've got going on is the fact that we don't have end-to-end visibility. And that is sort of what I've called the moonshot at the Postal Service now, is how do we get end-to-end visibility? Because what happens, I won't go into a lot of detail, but what happens is when that box that's going to New Hampshire gets delivered, and then it's supposed to go first in, first out, and then another 100 boxes get delivered. It gets buried somewhere and lost.
So just because my time is limited,
sure.
What commitments can you make to maintaining or improving on-time delivery in rural areas? And again, what do you need from this committee? And if you can be brief, and we can follow up after the committee if necessary.
Yes, no, look, I would love to have, there are so many different categories of first-class mail. I'd love to have that. Let's make sure, we should be delivering at least as well as our competition delivers packages. So we're talking sort of 95%.
Right, and look, rural America depends on the post office for a whole lot of things. That last mile of delivery is critically important. We're talking about people's medications. We're talking about payments for small businesses and supplies. So this is really important to us. So let me just move on to one other issue, and I want to follow up on the, on that last line of questioning with you and get some details and get some commitments. But during your House testimony on March 17th, you committed to giving Congress 5-year financial projections on cost-cutting measures. In a subsequent letter, the committee asked you to respond by this Friday. Getting timely analysis is critical for Congress to act on your requests and understand the impacts of possible reforms on the services provided to our constituents. Will you meet Friday's deadline?
Yes, I think we can meet Friday's deadline.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I've spent the last couple of days studying for this, so I haven't had a chance to look at that. But we'll get you something by Friday.
Well, so have you read the analysis? I mean, it was due Friday, and if you think you're going to meet the deadline.
Yes, and so what we've put together is basically, here's what our trend line is, and then here are the things that can move that trend line up or down: price, volume, productivity, and so what we can get you is here's the trend, here's how we think we can bend that trend positively or negatively.
So let me.
I think that's exactly what you'd like to see.
What cost-cutting measures have you identified as part of the analysis, and what impact would they have on the projected date that you'll run out of cash?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what we're doing from a cost-cutting point of view, it really, for us, is all about the effective and efficient movement of the mail. And so you've got to look at the various
Right, but
categories.
what specific measures have you identified, and what does that do in terms of the long-time projection from when you're running out of
Right.
company?
So let's walk through, if you want, we can walk through the entire sort of mail system. So you've got the carriers, right? The carriers that deliver mail, that pick up mail. We look all the time at how do we make those routes more efficient. Then you go to the processing plants. We're looking at how do we make that more efficient. Obviously, you have to have investments in technology. And then that mail gets transported. We're looking at how do you take out transportation costs. As I mentioned, we've taken out $2 billion in transportation costs. And then you've got it showing up again at another plant where it ultimately gets delivered by the carrier, that full cycle. We look at every single phase of it.
So
to
you
see
have
where we can save
proposals
money.
in this letter, and I realize I'm a little over time. So what do those proposals do to the projection of when you'll run out of money? Are you going to be able to be solvent for longer?
Yeah, I do want to clear up a misconception because, I think the PRC testified that we've got cash to last us a certain amount of time. Let me be very, 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 very clear. We are out of cash. We are out of cash. If we had to pay all of our bills today, we could not pay all of our bills today. We are out of cash. What we are doing right now is we're basically borrowing money from our retirement plans to fund current operations. I'm not particularly comfortable with that. I promise you our employees are not particularly comfortable with that.
And neither am I.
You all shouldn't be comfortable
Right.
with that. None of us should be comfortable with that. To me, that's why we have to have
right.
this discussion of how we fix this broken business model.
So I am over time. I want to follow up with you, and I hope you will be more clear about what the savings you think will do in terms of your cash flow and cash solvency.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Glad to come meet with you at any time you'd like to have that discussion. Glad to do it.
Senator Langford.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. David, thanks. Thanks for stepping into this role and taking this on. This is a tough task to be able to take on. I'm always interested in when we in Congress are talking to USPS about how you balance your budget. I find that always ironic for us to be able to be in that conversation as a body that has $2 trillion worth of overspending this year. And our
I wasn't going to bring that up.
No, I will. I will. It is a challenge that we got to be able to figure out. I want to be able to drill down on multiple things here. Part of the challenge that you're facing is not only the complexity of the organization, the number of people that are in the organization, the equipment that are there, the out-of-date buildings, and all the other things that are there that make this incredibly expensive to be able to manage, but the lack of flexibility to be able to actually help fix this. So I want to drill down on a couple of things. In the short time that you've been there so far, we're dealing with, over the last 10 years, and you've only been there months at this point, but over the last 10 years, delivery has gotten slower as well. So we've got increasing amounts of expenses and decreasing speed of service. In the same time period, Amazon and Walmart are racing to try to get deliveries to people's homes in 2 hours, and it's now taken 5 days for a lot of folks in rural America to be able to get a letter moving, where it used to take 2 in the past. As you're dealing with the debt in other areas, this has got to be one of the areas you're focused on as well, is just speed of delivery, because that increases the volume of people actually using that. Where are you going on that?
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, the moonshot, the visibility, right? I mean, the reason why, well, let's look at the context first. FedEx, Amazon, UPS, deliver, call it anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 billion packages a year. We deliver 110 billion pieces every year. So the magnitude, the difference in the networks is dramatic. And so for us, it's all about visibility. We've got to know where that piece of mail is at any particular point in time, because what happens is it gets shoved to the back of the line and forgotten. And so we are working on it right now to where we can get visibility into every piece, so that if we see that a piece is delayed, we can call that plant manager and say, the piece is delayed. This is not rocket science technology. This is not technology that doesn't exist. This is technology that exists, that other companies use, again, because we've underinvested in the network, because we don't have the cash. We haven't been able to get that end-to-end visibility. That is absolutely where our focus is right now.
Okay. It's interesting to me, there's been an ongoing dialogue for a while about zip codes And this has been fascinating for me. And a lot of it's really based around tax collection, quite frankly. Online businesses and trying to be able to get tax revenue to that local community. And let me just give you a couple ideas. We have a beautiful community in northern Oklahoma called Enid. Vance Air Force Base is there, great community, fantastic folks. There's also North Enid, which is a different town. And everybody just thinks, no, it's the northern part of Enid. No, it's not. It's a totally different town. Same zip code, by the way. And the confusion is always there between North Enid and Enid to try to figure out where's tax revenue going and everything else. And they base it on zip code collection on this. This has been an interesting thing. They're not looking for a new post office. They're not looking for a new physical location. They're trying to do better tracking of where actually revenue should go and how that should actually flow. I can give you lots of different ideas, like the fabulous community of Hochatown in southeastern Oklahoma, which is a great resort community around a lake. They're also connected to Broken Bow, same zip code on it. They're trying to figure out, they're totally different operations between Broken Bow and between Hochatown on it, but the tax revenues all go into one. How do we solve this? They're not looking for a new physical place. They're just looking for a different number on this. Why is this so hard?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, every number means something in that zip code, right? And our entire network, so those 110 billion pieces only move because every number means something. And every time you add a new zip code, what do you have to do? You have to add something to the network, right? That's why, when I first heard that it would cost $800 million to fix all these zip codes, I thought, well, that's crazy. But it's true, because you don't fix, there is not one light switch that you flip and say, okay, now the mail goes there. You've got to change the entire network. And that takes a lot of capital.
Is that a technology issue, just from out-of-date technology? Because just about every other system, you change some numbers on it and it reroutes.
No, it's not technology. It's physical assets, right? And so for example, we'll have a sorter that's lined up and it would have call 24 bays in it, right? You add zip codes, you got to add a 25th bay, a 26th bay, a 27th bay, because those boxes are going to that specific zip code. And you don't have to add that in one plant, you have to add that in every plant. And so it's the multiplying effect of the capital that's required. We are, and I would love to have our staff sit with your staff, and again, with any members of Congress, let's figure out a way, because the underlying problem is insurance rates, taxes. It's not delivery of mail. The underlying problem is not our problem. Would love to have us all get together and say, how can we fix this and change it without having to massively change our system?
Yeah, I look forward to that conversation on it. We've had some good dialogue before about the electric vehicles that were purchased by previous administration with no chargers and some of the waste that was done there that should have been actually going towards actually improving the quality of delivery on this rather than towards some other random goal that wasn't met. So thanks again for your work.
Thank you.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming before us here. I wanted to just start by asking you about the census. This is something that's so vitally important to our country, explicitly stated within the Constitution as a function of our government here. The Census Bureau is currently testing the use of postal workers to conduct the census. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Is that something you approved?
It is, yes, absolutely.
And so I guess I wanted to ask you, because this was looked into, this was examined during the first Trump administration. What was the outcome of that pilot during the first Trump administration?
I'm not familiar with any pilot that was done in the first administration. I obviously wasn't here, so I'd hate to speak to that. What I can tell you is that we are in the middle of the pilots right now. There's two, they're small pilots, but in one, we actually have, we tell our mail carriers, you can become an enumerator. So you have your current job, you can also be an enumerator. And in the other pilot, we're using our carriers to get follow-up information from addresses. They're both actually going fairly well. Look, the discussions, the only discussions I've ever had about this is how do we do it more efficiently and less costly for the American public. We'll see if we can do that through the pilots, but you would think that it would make sense that we could do it more efficiently and cheaper because we're already going to every house every day.
I'm all for efficiency and for saving money, but again, this is a function of our government that's laid out in the Constitution. And I'll be honest with you, it concerns me that you were not aware of a pilot program that tried to do exactly this in the first Trump administration because, look, I'm just going through the Census government report right now, and there's a recommendation section here, and it says, all pilot activities were discontinued based on the irreconcilable conflicts of the requirements of 13 USC and 18 and 39 USC. So I guess I just want to ask you.
You can tell me what those are, because I don't know what those are.
But this is this is not like, you don't come to us for the cheat codes here. Like, this is something that you should be aware of as you are approving
I am
this.
absolutely aware of it. Our
Okay,
legal
so tell me
department-
what.
Our legal department is absolutely aware of it.
So tell me then what.
No one has said anything about us violating any particular statute. I know
Are you?
that there
Can
was
you
some
tell me what the
discussion-
difference is between Title 39 and Title 13 then?
I'm not a lawyer. No, I could not. Well, I used to be a lawyer.
Well, I'm not a lawyer either, but I know the difference. And so what I'll just tell you is that what we have is Title 39 allows the Postal Service to share information with law enforcement and others during certain circumstances. In contrast, Title 13 explicitly forbids sharing of individuals' census data for any purpose. The reason I raise this is that the pilots that you're trying to do down in Huntsville and Spartanburg, we've gone through this several years ago. And as mentioned, they were discontinued based off of irreconcilable conflicts between these two. So the question is, if you're trying to move forward with this, what's different? Are you seeking legislative fixes? Are there other things you're doing that would try to show this?
Yeah, no, I am absolutely glad to get our staff together with your staff. I know that those were issues. I know that the oath was an issue. And I know that our legal department and the Department of Commerce's and the Census Bureau's legal departments looked at those issues, resolved those issues. I cannot tell you the fundamental underpinnings of the legal statutes that do that, but absolutely glad to have anyone on your staff or yourself.
Look, I'll follow with your team. I'm the ranking member on the subcommittee that oversees the census, which is why we've been so focused on this.
Sure.
If okay with you, I'd like to make sure that we have congressional oversight to be able to do a visit to these pilot programs and be able to learn more. Is that something you can agree to?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, look, the other thing I'll just say here, and I just want to raise this, is that we've been having some issues down at the Trenton processing facility. There was an OSHA inspection, some continued things that haven't been remedied, and I've been hearing from some of my constituents there. I just wanted to ask, would you be able to ensure that you'll work with me to make sure that anything that is continued to be outstanding in terms of the concerns that were raised are ones that we can remedy?
Yes, thank you for bringing that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Look, safety is our #1 priority. If there's some issues there, I won't send you to my staff to follow up on that. Call me, and I'll make sure we follow up.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure we get each other's numbers. We'll follow back up. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll yield back.
Senator Scott.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right. So I don't understand how a business loses money. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So if you couldn't get any more money out of the government, all right, and we didn't let you borrow more money, because if you borrow more money, ultimately, you know what that's going to happen. The Postal Office, I've been up here 7 years, it never makes money. So they'll come ask for a bailout, right? So we're not fixing anything. There's no real solution here. So if there were no limitations on what you could do, what would you do?
So you may have seen the press reports. We actually brought in the preeminent restructuring firm in the world to look and tell us exactly that. Let's assume that we aren't going to get any help. What are we going to do? They're in the process of putting that report together. I would tell you that there is absolutely no doubt that would lead to a streamed down postal service. It would lead to delays in service. I mean, look, as the chairman very appropriately pointed out, 80% of our costs are labor costs. There's only one way you can become profitable here, and that's address the labor costs. And so we would have to go in and look at how we can change days of service, reduce the level of services, and we would have to shut down a massive number of post offices.
So, all right, so let's take, I looked on a report I've got that if you look at the number of pieces on marketing mail versus the revenue, it's dramatically less per piece than first class. So why is that? First off, I'm sure we all love all the marketing mail we get because I have to get an extra recycling bin for it.
My old business, we loved that, by the way. Please recycle
that's
that.
probably good for your business. It's funny. You just recycle it, people don't look at it.
But, it is the antiquated pricing structure that is imposed upon us by the PRC. And so, to the chairman's
who's
point.
Who's the PRC? Why do
the
we?
Postal Regulatory Commission.
But why do what? So who's that?
They were set up when the Postal Service was split so that they could oversee this quote-unquote monopoly. Now, in 1971, arguably we were a monopoly. There is zero chance that we are a monopoly at this point in time. And so I completely agree with the chairman. It seems to me that we have a regulatory body that is regulating in a past era.
So why wouldn't they want you to make money?
Well, they've got what I've understood from them, and I won't profess to speak for them. They say they have to balance a number of things. But
marketing mail.
Right. So here's the balance that they did last. They told us we can only raise prices once a year. And they acknowledged that that could be $700 million to the Postal Service. That could cost us $700 million. In their opinion, they said, but that doesn't make a big dent in their total loss. So we're going to do it. Who does that benefit? It benefits the marketing mailers, right? That's $700 million that got transferred from us directly to our customers.
No, it got transferred to the taxpayers of the country. That's who it got transferred to. The taxpayers paid for it, right? Because we're going to have to cover your losses.
That's absolutely correct. And so I think your point is absolutely correct. A normal business takes price and volume and finds the best mix.
Why are they in existence? Why do you need them?
Because we don't need them, but they are in existence, ostensibly, again, I won't speak for them, but ostensibly because we are a monopoly and they have to regulate the monopoly.
How many marketing contracts have you lost to FedEx and UPS? For marketing mail?
Oh, no, marketing mail, we are the only ones that deliver marketing mail. We do have a monopoly on the mailbox.
But you can't charge whatever price.
No.
And you have to charge less than first class.
Absolutely.
So a letter I want to send to my grandkid, costs me more than the marketing stuff I don't want to read.
Absolutely. And Senator, you would not believe how arcane and complicated those pricing rules are because there's so many different classes and so many different discounts. You definitely need an advanced degree to understand them, and I don't.
Okay. And you acknowledge if you go borrow money, ultimately all you're saying is if we go borrow money, you're going to come back later and ask for the taxpayer to pay for it, right?
Well, no, I truly believe, and this is, in defense of the mailing industry, I truly believe that if we become an economic engine rather than just thinking of us in terms of delivery, and we help grow that industry. It is a $2 trillion industry. And actually, the marketing that they do is very effective. We can make it more effective if we can manage the price and the volume.
They should pay for it. If they're going to make money off of it, they should pay for it.
And I would hope they do pay for it through paying taxes. And look, I completely agree on the price piece too. We have to match price and volume that's best for us. But I truly do believe that this $2 trillion ecosystem, we have a choice to either shrink it or grow it. It's been shrinking for the last 15 years. If it continues to shrink, net dollars into the Treasury get reduced. I think it's a discussion worth having. And look, you all get to make those policy decisions. I'll do it either way. But I do think it's a discussion worth having.
All right, thank you.
So, Rick, I think you've hit on this. If you combine the PRC with the Board of Governors, make it one entity, they can make their prices what they need. If you go from 78 cents to 95 cents, that's 1.6 billion. If you go from 6 days to 4 days, that's 6 billion. You've almost wiped out your entire debt by going to 4 days and by allowing the price to go up. Just 2 changes would do it. You could even allow people still to keep 6 days if they wanted to pay for it. But, you'll find that there's not going to be a lot of votes to allow that to happen. And so we prevent them from letting it happen. Hiring freeze also saves $1.5 billion. There's all kinds of things that can be done that immediately could wipe out your $9 billion, but you probably would have to go to less days of delivery would be thing. The price helps, but that's $1.6 billion of $9 billion or $9.5 billion. So.
We've looked a little bit at that too.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I think you've heard in a bipartisan way the importance of the Postal Service, particularly to rural Americans. It's a lifeline. And I just, hearing you talk about how there's going to need to be reductions in service because you don't have the cash. When most Americans have just watched us launch a war that we think is going to cost at least $80 billion. You can imagine how that hits to someone who says, how do we not have the ability to fund my rural postal delivery so I can get my medication or vital information in my post box, but we somehow have money for everything else. So I encourage you to advocate and push back where you can. And we want you to succeed. We want the post office to succeed. But I want to follow up on some of the lines of questioning that we had on this side of the aisle, particularly from Senator Peters, on the role of the U.S. Post Office in our elections. Because I can't think of something that's more important than our democracy and making sure we have free and fair elections. But the U.S. Postal Service is now part of this bigger story of this president desperate to federalize our elections. He has tried every which way to say that if he and his party don't win in these November elections, they were rigged. He said it in the State of the Union. And now we have this new rule that you've put out saying that states have to turn over their voting rolls, and you, the U.S. Postal Service, will decide, okay, who's approved to send their ballot through the mail. It's just another backdoor way of trying to influence this election. And to show the level of obsession that this president has, he's literally left the leader, Mr. Thune, Senator Thune, on the stage right now and canceled the signing of a housing bill like 8 minutes ago until we pass the SAVE Act, this obsession he has, which will disenfranchise a huge number of voters. So he's obsessed with this, and he's pulled in the U.S. Postal Service. Have you ever voted by mail?
I have not.
Do you believe that a piece of mail that's put in a mailbox should be sent no matter what? Do you believe that is your obligation?
We have a lot of different rules. I mean, if you want a yes or no answer, I'd say no. I mean, obviously, if it's dangerous, if it doesn't
I'm not talking about an inflammatory thing. A letter that is not a threat, just a piece of mail that is not a weapon, it's not a threat. It's a ballot. Do you believe right now it is your obligation to send that ballot to its intended recipient?
Yeah, we send every piece of mail that we send in accordance with our regulations and the mailman.
But the state of Michigan's about to start mail-in voting, end of June for our primary. If a 60-year-old woman in Grayling, Michigan puts that ballot after June 25th into one of the U.S. Postal Service's mailboxes, as she's done for many elections, will you direct the Postal Service to deliver that ballot?
I don't have to direct the Postal Service to do that because we do that every day. That is exactly what
So then why are you demanding, actually, that for Michigan's voter rolls in other states to be presented to you? The president has sued us, okay? We're in court right now. He sued us and a bunch of other states for our voting rolls. So he's obsessed with this. The Constitution gives the right to states to execute elections. So you are a pawn in this, unfortunately. I don't think you're a bad person from what I know of you. You run a big company. but you are part of a much bigger story that's playing out literally on a stage right now. And so if you don't get Michigan's voter rolls for the general election in November, will you move those ballots in your mailboxes?
Remember, right now, we only have a proposed rule, so there are no new rules.
But have you proposed it?
We will move those.
You've proposed it?
We did.
Okay, so
we will move those ballots in accordance with whatever rule is in effect at that point in time.
So, but you proposed it, it's your rule, right?
We did, yes.
Okay, so you want it to pass?
Yes, I mean, as I said before, this is not something that's new. This is something that we've been recommending for many, many, many years. And again, it's a process that is followed by a lot of states already. States like California and Oregon, states like
I
Florida.
think you're conflating, I think, some of the things. I have no problem with a barcode being put on a piece of mail and following it like that. But I just think it's important to understand, especially since you are a lawyer, not this kind of lawyer, but you are a lawyer, that you are being used as part of a much bigger story that this president is trying to play out, where he does not believe elections that he loses are valid elections. He's willing to do just about anything to show that he's actually a big winner, no matter what he does. And I just ask you, as a professional, as someone who's done serious things in your life, please push back on being a pawn in this authoritarian playbook. The Postal Service is one of the most important institutions in our country. Don't taint it with the obsession of this one man. Please push back. Yield back.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Postmaster General, for being here today. We've talked a little bit about the rural delivery. I think so many of us have constituents that reside outside of that 50-mile perimeter that the post office wanted us to focus their deliveries on around those regional processing and distribution centers. That's basically what the Delivering for America plan did. And unfortunately, it's left a lot of our rural Americans behind because, again, they live outside of those 50-mile circles around these distribution centers. And in early 2025, I think the PRC, the Postal Regulatory Commission, seemed to agree with the problem, and it recommended that the Postal Service reconsider its plan, the DFA plan, because so many of those rural communities will experience disproportionate downgrading of service standards, and we have seen that. So, Postmaster General, what is the Postal Service doing under your leadership now to make sure that we're protecting the delivery to all of our rural constituents?
Yeah, and you know, it's a great question, and it's not just rural constituents, it's all constituents, right? We have not been as good as we should be in delivering to all of America. And as I look at it, and again, I've been here 10 months, I would say that I've been here not a long period of time, but long enough to be able to see the core issue, right? And the core issue is that we built this vast network. The network we built is Logistics 101, right? Mm-hmm. It is hub and spoke, which has been every single logistics company in the history of the world since 1955 when Delta Airlines invented it. Every logistics company uses it. So the system that we've put in place makes total sense. The problem is we didn't learn how to operate that system as we were building it, right? And so what you've seen over the last 18 months is really some pretty dramatic increases in our service rates because we're actually starting to understand how to manage the network effectively. You'll continue to see that. You'll continue to see improvements in service. But I will tell you what irritates me more than anything is what we call the tail of the mail, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that constituents care if they get their mail in 2 days or 3 days or 3 days or 4 days. What they care about is when they get that wedding invitation after the wedding.
Right.
You know, they get a bill and it's already overdue.
Yeah.
And that is a different animal. That is not a network issue. That's a visibility of the piece issue. And that's where we're 100% focused right now. Because I would tell you, I would rather have I would rather have 100% of the mail delivered within a reasonable period of time than saying, let's just have 95% delivered in a certain period of time, and the other 5% we don't care about.
Exactly. Right? No, and I appreciate that. We've got to modernize. I understand the hub and spoke logistical model. That's important, but we realize as demographics shift or population shift, and there just has to be modernization along the way.
Absolutely.
I'm going to hit on the zip code issue as well. I know everyone has issues with this. I have a bill with several other colleagues this year to correct a number of those zip codes. And I'm going to hit on a community in Iowa that's been experiencing a lot of difficulties. Urbandale, Iowa, it was incorporated in 1917, became a community. So well over a century now. This community of 47,000 people has 6 different zip codes, and the mail is continuously directed to the wrong post offices. So mail is ending up in the next community over, and people are chasing down the mail. They have people that have to leave their school to go drive to the next community over to get their postal deliveries. We have medical centers that have mail misdirected to another community. So it has been a big issue, and the city has routinely been ignored, and they have exhausted all of their appeals now. So it has been a really big issue. And the post office continually comes back and says, oh, no, it's about tax collection or whatever. Okay. A lot of excuses out there, but I'm sorry, this is one community with 6 different postal codes. It's 47,000 people. It's got to be addressed. We shouldn't have to pass this legislation to address this situation, but we're going to have to, because we feel we've been ignored and put off for way too long. So I'm just raising that issue in front of you today so you understand this is a great frustration with, I think in this bill we have, I don't know how many communities, maybe 75 communities we're going to try and address. And then I also want to address what Senator Scott brought up, talking about the marketing mail. I actually do have a bill that would address this and help you out considerably. So it's a bill addressing political junk mail, because I'm sorry, Republicans and Democrats alike, we're sending out a lot of flyers at a discounted price, and we should disallow that, okay? Political committees, you name it, our own committees, we should have to pay the full price to send out the political junk mail. And, you know, I enjoy it. I'm in this world. But you know what? When I get those political flyers in the mail at home, I also am using the recycling bin. Okay, so again, my bill would require the Postal Service to send mail from those qualified political committees at a regular rate. So we see 2.3 billion pieces of political mail every single year, and that would certainly contribute to your revenue stream if we got rid of that discounted rate.
It is the amazing thing that I say about this organization is that it's the law of large numbers, right? 2.3 billion times a small amount, a big amount.
It is a huge amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the amazing thing about this organization. When you think of 110 billion pieces, it doesn't take a lot to create a lot of revenue.
Exactly. I am well over my time. Thank you for indulging.
Senator
Gallego.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Steiner, in San Luis, Arizona, the Postal Service does not provide home or mail delivery. That means that residents are forced to retrieve mail from a P.O. box in the local post office. 40 years ago, San Luis was 2,000 people. It is now 35,000 people. It's on the border of the Arizona-Mexico border. As a result, San Luis's sole post office is heavily congested and running out of space and capacity. And also because of backups at the border, when people are crossing the border in the morning or in the evening trying to go back, especially our day laborers, that whole street basically becomes a wall. It's nearly impossible for our residents in San Luis to either go east or west along that. So I've heard this multiple times. And it's affecting people who can have multiple jobs. Our disabled veterans are having tough times getting to pick up their checks. And it's caused a lot of heartache. We've been asking the post office for, almost generations now to ask this. Do you think that the post office can find the time, the money, and the focus to actually add more home delivery in this booming town of 35,000?
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, that is the fundamental question of why we're here today, right? You know, I said it before, to the chairman's point. How do you reduce costs, right? A long time ago, remember, 170 million points of delivery every year, growing by 1 million every year. At the same time that volumes of mail are decreasing by 5 to 8% compounded. That is a recipe for disaster. The math does not work there.
Except the math is not evenly distributed. It's not evenly distributed.
Yeah,
because there are areas of the country.
I'm more than happy.
Because there are areas of the country that are growing versus not growing. So, like, if you look at your western states, right, Texas, Nevada, Arizona.
To have that conversation with you. We need to realize, like I said in my comments, we can do whatever you want. We'll do whatever you want. Who's going to pay for it, right? And those are the decisions that we have to make every day. Absolutely glad to personally take a look at the situation that you're talking about individually.
I'd actually invite you to come down.
I have to look at it collectively. I can't look at it as 30,000 stops. I've got to look at it as 170 million stops.
Right, but again, because it's not evenly distributed where growth versus not growth, I think actually being able to see and zero in, especially with the amount of data you have, you could actually find some solutions here. And in terms of money,
love to talk with you all to see what solutions.
And in terms of money, that rings very hollow to these communities. When they see ballrooms, they see jets, they see stupid wars getting started, and all this money being spent, and all they're asking is for what everyone else gets. By the way, the reason this hurts them is because they see all the other communities around them, and they all get home delivery, right? And they all get home delivery of things that they need now. And now, especially what we're seeing, like the increase in home deliveries of prescription drugs, for example, we're literally affecting people's health. People are missing the opportunity to get their timely prescriptions. This is a rural town. It's tough for them to get a lot of stuff. Mail is one of the few things that actually can be consistent. But over time, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. So I encourage you, I know you have this whole world you got to look at. I get it. Come down to San Luis, Arizona. Come down at 4 p.m. and see what these residents have been dealing with for almost 40 years. And I guarantee you there could be a solution to that. And maybe it's another, so maybe it's trying to do something on the other side of the street. But anything at this point would be best, because like these families are really being affected and it's starting to affect business, everything else like that, and of that nature.
Glad to have that conversation.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Postmaster General, for being here. If maybe offer a suggestion, if you'd be willing to work with our office and our team, let's put together the ideas that you have. I'm intrigued by your incredible success in the business world. Let's put together these ideas. How do we put the package of reforms together and move the ball forward and finally get something done, right? Because, you know, one of the things about politics that's different than business is that there's a lot of people who love to talk here, but very seldom actually like to take action. I would like to work with you to get actually some meaningful things done.
Well, thank you.
Now, when I came in, it was interesting. I had this, my team put together this very fancy binder. It was about post office reform. But the hearing has turned into a mail-in balloting conversation and principles of the Constitution, which is very, very heartwarming to somebody who swore an oath to the Constitution when I became a U.S. citizen when I was 18. So are you familiar by any chance, don't expect you to, but just in case, there was a bill that the Democrats brought up during the Biden administration, and as you know, bills are numbered. So bill number 1 is the first one they do, and then I think we're now in bill number 5,000, but it's called H.R. 1, and then it was also S1, so meaning it was the number 1 priority of Democrats in the House and Democrats in the Senate. Do you remember what that bill is about?
I don't.
You wouldn't. No, I wouldn't expect you to. I was like you, a business guy, that paid attention to all this stuff. It was called the For the People Act. The Democrats are phenomenal at false advertising. So what the For the People did is it basically nationalized our elections. So this bill that they had that was their number 1 priority was about nationalizing the elections. So I know that we live in a world where there's supreme hypocrisy, but the idea that Democrat witness after Democrat witness, instead of talking about how to fix the post office, we're talking about the scandalous idea that somehow states' rights were being violated. And yet, 3 years ago, they wanted to take over the entire election system for the United States of America, not to give it more voter integrity, but to diminish voter integrity. Universal mail-out ballots, unsolicited ballots that would go out, automatic voter registration, regardless of whether there's a test to see if that person is a citizen. And then And Mr. Chairman, you were here, you'll remember, they couldn't get it passed because, of course, here you have to get 60 votes, right? We have to get 60 votes. So what did the Democrats advocate for? What did they fight for to get this passed? They want to get rid of the filibuster. They wanted to get rid of the filibuster so that they could pass nationalized elections. 3 years later, all of them are testifying to say, it's outrageous. President Trump's trying to nationalize our election. He's not. He's trying to get rid of voter fraud. How dare you guys talk about getting rid of the filibuster? If it wasn't for Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, that would have happened. They would have made D.C. and Puerto Rico a state. They would have packed our Supreme Court. But now, all of a sudden, they dug up from their bottom desk drawer the United States Constitution, and they're appalled as they're here talking to you. It's a total disgrace. But so let me get back. Should we get back to post office stuff now?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's talk about the post office. How do you see the post office's role in combating scams, illicit activity? How do you see that from your lens?
Yeah, so we have the Postal Inspection Service, by the way, the longest established law enforcement agency in the United States, and they're looking at that constantly. As you can imagine, you know, a lot of those scams go after the most vulnerable, shut-ins, older folks, and you know, we're looking at it. I've talked with our chief inspector, and where we're moving now is more toward hiring agents, not that have a gun and knock on a door, but hiring agents that have a keypad and work on a computer. You know, we get a lot of information through mail covers and different things like that, where we can find, you know, the question is not how do we stop it after it happens, but how can we start to figure out how to stop it before it happens, right?
So it'd be fair.
So we've got a number of inspectors working on just that.
Well, by the way, thank you for doing that. And so you view it not just, hey, our job is to deliver anything, but because there are scammers out there are bad actors out there, and you do have an important role to say, hey, if somebody's being targeted with a scam or there's some untoward activity, drugs, congratulations, you guys have knocked out a lot of what the drug cartels do, sending illicit drugs through the mail. You view that as a very important piece of what the post office does.
Absolutely.
Right, it's not just, hey, anything's mailed, I don't care what it is, we're just gonna let it go through, correct?
Well, you know, obviously we have rules on what we can and can't do. But yes, we do absolutely view our role as making sure that we protect the American public.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to stop those $4 offers for 2 large pizzas, even though maybe it's unhealthy, right? But you have a role in playing, making sure bad stuff doesn't happen. So transitioning to that, if the post office inspector were to look at unsolicited mail-in, mail-out ballots, where you go to an apartment complex and one unit is receiving 6 ballots, that's a problem, right? Meaning, if there's only one human being that lives in that apartment and that one human being is receiving 6 ballots, none of which are in their name because they've been turned over to movement, you wouldn't just suggest, and my Democrat colleagues have left, Elvis has left the building here, but you would not suggest that one person receive ballots that they didn't ask for that aren't even in their name. You would view that and go, wow, this is a problem, correct?
Well, we would, you know, anytime we see what we would consider potential illegal activity, obviously there's search warrants, there's different rules you have to follow. But, you know, that's what our Postal Inspection Service is there for, is to look for those type of situations. And, you know, we don't open mail. We don't stop the delivery of mail. But we can certainly go to other agencies from a law enforcement point of view.
And say, hey, this is a problem. We're seeing this potentially illegal activity.
Yes.
No, I totally understand. You know, I just want to give a quick anecdote. I was asked by the government to go down to where I was born, Colombia, South America, and monitor the election down there. They don't allow mail-in balloting. And I asked the registrar, I said, well, why don't you allow people to vote by mail? There's some people who can't get to the polling locations, et cetera. And obviously we're in Colombia, so we're speaking Spanish. He turned to his aide and said, I don't think the senator is saying the right words. I'm not understanding his question. So I repeated it, and he looked at me quizzically, and he said, Well, if you just mailed somebody a ballot without knowing who they were, who's receiving it, that would open the door to massive fraud. You'd have to be totally and completely insane to run an election that way. This is a country with the GDP of the size of LA, lecturing the United States of America on why our elections should be run better. And I think we should look at that as a moment of opportunity.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, welcome. Good to see you. I want to show you a picture, if I could, just to start. This is North St. Louis, Missouri. This is April 29th of this year. This is right around North Taylor Avenue. This is a pile of mail. Thousands of pieces of mail. Tax documents, prescription drugs, bills, utility communications from companies, thousands and thousands of documents. As you might imagine, the residents of St. Louis, when this was discovered on April 29th, were absolutely outraged, not least because the mail has been slow and not delivered and missing targets for years now. And here we have thousands of pieces of mail. Some of the postmarks here, this wasn't going across the country. You have letters here that were just going across town that had been dumped in this pile. Now, the Postal Service promised the public and me, when this was discovered, that there'd be a full accounting of this. We would find out what happened, and we'd have a full and total investigation and complete transparency. And since that time, I've heard nothing. That was April. I've heard nothing. What's the answer?
My answer would be, when you put up that in front of me, I'm outraged.
What have you done about it?
And I think everybody in the Postal Service that bleeds postal blue would be outraged.
Well, but what have you done about it? That was months ago. What have you done since then?
Since this is the first time I've heard about it.
How is this possibly the first time you've heard about it since I've written to you? Members of the delegation have written to you. Listen, I get thousands of pieces of mail a week about the post office. People's mail not being delivered. Here it is in a pile. And you're telling me this is the first time you've heard about it?
It's the first time I've heard about it.
Don't you think that's kind of exceptional? What's going on in the management of the Postal Service?
Senator, because
you don't know?
I don't think I have heard about it.
What's going on in the management of the Postal Service that you've got a pile of thousands of pieces of mail in a major city, and this is the first time, you're the Postmaster General, you're telling me it's the first time you've heard about it. Who works for you? What's going on?
640,000 people.
Well, maybe you want to fire some of them. Do you think that this is doing the job?
I think that's outrageous.
You're missing your targets all over my state. Let's take a look at another picture. Your targets for on-time delivery in my state, which were not good to begin with, are just in the 90s, meaning that you could miss it 10% of the time and give yourself an A grade. But start looking there in 2024, 2025, you're hitting your on-time delivery targets 76% of the time, maybe. That means fully a quarter of the time, best case scenario, people's mail in my state is not being delivered to them on time. Is this acceptable?
It's absolutely not acceptable.
Well, why is it not changing?
It is changing. If you actually look at the numbers, you'll see the numbers have been increasing.
It is not changing. That's this year. That is April of this year. Just last year, the Inspector General, when I asked him to do an audit of the St. Louis Distribution Center, the Inspector General told me it was the worst case of lack of on-time delivery, the worst case of distribution problems he had ever seen, ever, in an audit that he had done. Ever. What's been changed since then?
If you look at the service scores, I would commend you to go online. We publish our service scores weekly.
I don't want to go online. I want you to come here with answers because you're the Postmaster General of the United States. I don't want to have you come here and be told you don't know what's going on in my home state. When I have written to you, when I have called you, when my residents have called you and asked you, when they're paying their taxes and they're paying these Postal Service marks and increases, I don't want to be told, go online. I want answers. And the other thing I want to know is, why are you getting bonuses and members of your staff getting bonuses for this kind of performance? Let's take a look. Just look at the numbers. The Postmaster Generals of this country in the last 10 years have gotten bonuses over $2 million. You got a bonus last year, $305,781. Why? Why are you getting bonuses when my constituents can't get the mail?
Senator, I don't control bonuses. Our Board of Governors
Will you pledge not to take them?
Pardon me?
Will you pledge not to take them?
Will you pledge to reward our people?
Oh, no. Don't turn it around. You are in charge of the Postal Service, and we have given you everything you've asked for. Just 3 years ago, this Congress allotted tens of billions of dollars to the Postal Service. I'm glad you think it's funny, Postmaster General. You think that this situation is funny. Let the record reflect the Postmaster General is laughing as he gets asked why he's taking bonuses while there's piles of undelivered mail in my state. It's a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace.
Let the record reflect that I was laughing when you said we've been given everything we've asked for.
You have been given an opportunity to deliver the mail, and you're here laughing about it. You are here telling me you don't know, you're unprepared, and let the record reflect you won't pledge not to take bonuses. So you're going to keep on taking them? Is that what you're telling me? Yes or no? Will you refuse bonuses so long as the mail goes undelivered?
Any piece of mail?
Yes or no? Will you refuse bonuses until the mail gets delivered? Yes or no?
What mail?
Oh, this is extraordinary. In other words,
No,
you don't know. You want the money. Unbelievable. 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 I am absolutely astounded at this today, General.
As am I.
Well, you should be. And frankly, if things don't get better, you ought to resign because you're not doing the job. You're leaving your good postal workers out there. You're hanging them out to dry. They don't make near what you do. They're working their butts off. They're getting blamed, and you're getting the bonus. We got a big problem.
Time has expired.
And based on what I've seen today, you're part of it.
I have a follow-up question on this. The piles of mail that were depicted in the picture, I guess, near St. Louis, can you look at that mail and find out the day it was supposed to be delivered and who the delivery person was on that day?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
and I would expect, you know, I do not know every detail of every piece of mail that we have, but I would expect that there has been action taken.
But my follow-up question
is
I think the senator and the committee deserves to know. So I would think within a week you should be able to get back to us with a report, because it would take me about 30 minutes to look at that mail and the address and the timestamp and to say Joe Smith was delivering the mail that day and Joe Smith dumped it. And really, Joe Smith should be indicted by now, because I'm guessing that's felony to.
I would totally agree with you.
Yeah. So, but will you get back to us within a week
Yes,
with some kind of update on that?
I think, Senator, I think we can get back to you within an hour. My guess is that our folks know exactly what's going on there.
All right. And if it doesn't involve an indictment, we're going to want to know why and why someone, if that person still works for the post office, that's a problem.
I would like to know that too, if that's the case.
But see what you can do on that.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you've hired a preeminent restructuring firm, and they've completed a report for you? Or it's
Pardon
not?
me?
You said you had hired a preeminent restructuring firm to look at the post office. Has that report been given to you?
No, they're in the process of putting that together.
When will that be completed?
I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm certain that there's a lot of findings in draft form. But I'm not. I haven't asked them when the final.
Will that report be sent to us?
I'm glad to do it.
I would send it to the committee. You can start with the chair and the ranking member, and then others who want it as well, because that's exactly what we need is someone, somebody who restructures a business. That's what you do if you're at Waste Management and losing money, but you would react. And I really think ultimately it's part of the answer, but I think it's also when we have these hearings, there still is too much of, oh, well, Congress hasn't let me do all these things, so I can't. There is truth to that, and Congress should. But there's also truth to the fact that the hiring freeze can save $3 billion a year. You say it's in place. Let's make sure. We'd like the information to know that it is I understand if the vice president of the post office resigned, you replace them. But most all of the other jobs through attrition. But we also should have a concerted strategy. The only way to save money, the government is not efficient. They're not bad people, but you don't have a profit motive and you have too many restrictions. So you will never, not you, but the post office will never be efficient. They will never be good at anything. The only way to make them more efficient is to outsource to companies that have to make a profit. And so you have to look at this and you have to aggressively do it. You have to aggressively do the opposite of what DeJoy was doing. And so you have to aggressively do the things you're allowed to do. So hiring freeze and outsourcing are the two simple things you can do. Anything you can stop that he put in place that isn't already going, I don't think there's the hope that you're going to, somehow outcompete Amazon or UPS or something. And so you really shouldn't be trying to get more into their business. You should be trying to have less business, period. And you should have less of the government doing any business that you're involved with, because, and I think you'd still lose money. If you outsourced 100%, you'd still lose money. And I'm more than interested in, the idea of combining the PRC. It would take legislation to do that. But in the meantime, everything within your power to bug the PRC, as well as talking to us as well to get the permission to raise the rates. Nobody likes higher rates, but we also don't like a $9 billion, loss every year. So all these things have to be done. If we truly were saving, I think you said, $2 billion on transportation and $3 billion on hiring, that would be $5 billion. That would mean that the deficit this coming year would be about 4 instead of 9.
And then remember, if we are allowed to invest our FERS assets just in a very conservative manner, and if the CSRS allocation gets done the way it should be done, that everybody agrees it should be done, that eliminates about 60% of the loss right there.
But my guess is it won't be $4 billion next year. What's the projection for when do you total up your deficit for the year? Is it with our fiscal calendar, September 30th, or when?
Yes, and again, we look at it controllable, non-controllable.
Right. But I know, but there's a number. So last year it was what, $9.5 billion?
If the controllable was closer to 3.
The deficit. We just got to go with the deficit
Sure.
for the year. $9.5 billion. We can't paper it over or make it something it's not. So $9.5 billion. What's your projection for it in the current year we're in?
Well, again, because of the actuarial of the accounting stuff, I don't pay attention to the non-controllable loss. We pay attention to the controllable loss. We're thinking that's around 2.8 billion.
What's the deficit going to be, though? What are you going to lose this year? Is it going to still be around 9?
Again, you have to look at retirement actuarial numbers. But it'll be in that $9 to $10 billion number.
So you can see how just sort of hearing these numbers, they don't really add up. If you save $2 billion on transportation, and it was 9.5 last year, then you'd be at 7.5.
Well, you got to cover inflation, right? You've got inflation.
Well, I know, but the thing is the numbers aren't adding up. So I agree you're trying to do some savings, but if you had 2 plus 3, that's 5, minus 9.5, you'd be at 4.5. The numbers aren't adding up. So the deficit's going to be just as bad next year as it was the last year, and it's getting worse. And so all of these things, it is crunch time, but you really have to show us that you're doing everything possible. And you have to reverse what DeJoy did. DeJoy messed it up and made it worse. He broke it. It was already broken, and he re-broke it and scrambled it into 1,000 pieces. You've got to do the opposite of everything he was doing. Everything he was doing was making the post office lose more money. And you are constrained. But outsourcing to a company that has to make a profit is one way to save money, and not hiring anybody and trying to get the employees to do the work. And then ultimately, really, the country needs to address the situation. You can fix your bottom line by going to 4 days delivery. And I think at first people would be upset by that. Some people might be. Some people would be happy that they get less junk mail, frankly. And you could still offer 6-day delivery if people are willing to pay the service for it. Have a fee if you want 6-day, and 4 days is free. Or so-called free. And all of a sudden would change overnight. Now, I know you can't do that, but when we see the report from the preeminent restructuring firm, whoever that is, they should be addressing that, because that's how you fix it. And you can call it controllable and uncontrollable, but you have to put, it's important for us to see both. Controllables on you, uncontrollables on us. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's part of their report. If it's not, I hope you will ask them to make that part of your report. And I talked so long that I have another member here. Man, I should have quit 5 minutes ago. Nothing personal.
Oh boy, I get to stay longer.
Nothing personal. Senator Blumenthal.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to interrupt your eloquent closing by making my entrance before now. Let me ask you first, a question which I think applies generally to your performance in the job. Will you commit that when we have specific questions about post offices, about postal service in Connecticut or elsewhere, that you will respond within a timely period?
Absolutely, and I hope we've been doing that.
And I know you've probably been asked about that in the past. I want to ask you about the recent executive order. I'm sure you've been asked about it so far, and I apologize. I've been in a Judiciary Committee meeting. But the United States Postal Service is not an election administration agency, is it?
No, absolutely not.
And you have no constitutional authority to review ballots or deny postal service to someone mailing in a ballot, do you?
I don't remember my constitutional law class that well, so I would have to defer that to lawyers.
Well, I think you know enough constitutional law to answer this question. The United States Postal Service has no role whatsoever in reviewing balloting or mail-in ballots under current law, does it?
I'm not trying to be obtuse here, but reviewing, I'm not sure what you mean by reviewing.
Well, the President's executive order says that the Postal Service should somehow review voter lists and then refuse to deliver mail, in effect.
No, we don't review the voter list. So the voter list for us is like a manifest, right? And so the state gives us the list of voters that they want ballots to go to, and then they give us the ballots. We match the ballots with the list, and we can tell the state, yes, all the ballots that you say are going to the right people are going, or no, different ballots are going, or maybe you missed some ballots. You know, it's what I said earlier. It really is trying to help the state make sure that the ballots that they send to the voters actually get there and get to those voters. And so it's strictly a manifest for us to make sure that the right ballots are going to the right people.
And do you have authority to deny delivery of ballots?
Not under the current rules. Our proposed rules would say that if we don't have that manifest, that we can't move the mail.
But you're not going to deliver, you're not going to refuse to deliver ballots to a voter that the states say is registered.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And you're not going to review the legitimacy of whether someone is properly registered.
No, not our function. We deliver mail.
And what if states say to you, we would just as soon you not do that kind of review?
Do the manifest and the ballots?
Correct.
Under the proposed rule, we would then not deliver that mail.
Well, you would refuse to deliver mail if states would prefer that you not do the matching?
Yeah, if they don't comply with a valid rule, again, as you know, the rules, they're proposed rules, they're not final rules. We have a comment period that we're looking at, but under the proposed rules, that would be correct.
You agree with the proposed rule?
You know, I think, what I think is that we need to be efficient and accurate in moving ballots. You know, when you look at what we've suggested to states now for years and years and years and years, it is exactly this rule. You know, if you look at it, whether it's Connecticut, Michigan, California, we have something we call Kit 600, and we have a lot of people that educate your folks in the state as to how to do it. The Kit 600 recommends unique barcodes, unique envelope.
Well,
so
if,
this is not
if the
something
state
we
of
haven't been doing
Connecticut says
for
to
years.
you, we want you to deliver mail-in ballots without conducting your purported, supposed, so-called review, which is unconstitutional, you will deliver the mail to Connecticut voters. Is that correct?
I'm confused. Under the proposed rule or under current rules?
Under the Constitution of the United States, you have an obligation. You run the Postal Service. You deliver the mail.
We
You
deliver the
don't
mail.
review ballots or registration. Nobody said you should. The Founding Fathers didn't envision that kind of review. This proposed rule is bogus, and I want your commitment that you will deliver the mail, including mail-in ballots, to Connecticut voters without conducting this bogus sham review.
Yeah, look, we'll deliver every piece of mail that meets our then current regulations.
Well, your regulations should not include a review or second-guessing the state on who its electors are, correct?
I think that our proposed rule is, as you know, subject to litigation. We'll see how that all turns out.
Well, I guess we will see, but it will probably be in court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to thank Mr. Steiner for joining us today to share his testimony with the committee. The record for this hearing will remain open until 5 p.m. on Friday, June 26, 2026. For the submission of statements and questions for the record, the hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you.